Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to go back to 2007 and analyze how Cristiano Ronaldo and Ryan Giggs played a key role in helping Manchester United overcome their first leg 2-1 deficit to destroy Roma at Old Trafford 7-1. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have both sides playing in a 4-2-3-1. And here we're going to focus on how United ensured that Roma didn't disrupt them going forward and where United were able to find weaknesses in Roma's backline to punish them here. When we look at Manchester United, you have them in a 4-2-3-1, and the key factors here was that we had Wayne Rooney playing from the left, and that's strictly based off the fact that Ferguson didn't trust Rooney in that central role to have the discipline to stop Daniele De Rossi. So what he ended up doing there was that he had Alan Smith up front, and he had Giggs sitting on De Rossi to ensure that he couldn't dictate the tempo of the game from deeper positions. That played a key role in Manchester United stifling Roma here because they were able to ensure that they couldn't play through midfield. They had Giggs stepping to De Rossi, they had Fletcher closing down Pizarro, and then Carrick was tasked with ensuring that Vucinic couldn't combine with Totti. You had Rooney doing a good tracking job on Cassetti, and up front, Giggs and Smith did a very good job to ensure that Roma's 3v2 superiority didn't punish them. If Smith stepped into the path of Mexes, then you would have Giggs stepping on De Rossi, and if Giggs pushed out into the path of Christian Kivu, then Smith would drop off of Mexes and shift into the path of De Rossi. The key here was to ensure that De Rossi didn't have time on the ball, and United ensured that they did that with the discipline of Smith and Giggs. Down the left-hand side, Ronaldo also did a very good job of tracking Panucci, but there was times where Panucci did get ahead of Ronaldo, but whenever he got into those zones, Manchester United were very fortunate that his crosses didn't meet their markers. When we look at Roma going forward, Heinze did a very good job on Wilhelmsen, and the real threat that Roma did possess was through Mancini and through Totti. With Mancini breaking down that left-hand side, O'Shea did a very good job against him, but there were times where Mancini got the better of O'Shea and even got the better of Ronaldo tracking back, but the key factor here for United was that Darren Fletcher did a very good job of shifting over into that zone, so if Mancini did get across O'Shea or even Ronaldo, Fletcher was there to ensure that Mancini couldn't pose a threat to Van der Sar on goal. That leaves us with Francesco Totti. What Totti wanted to do here was that he operated as a false nine, so he looked to drop off the center backs in West Brown and Ferdinand to get on the ball. The problem here was that there was no runs in behind the Manchester United defense that sat a bit deeper, so that was a big problem for Roma. And whenever Totti did look to combine with his teammates, he was often within close proximity of them, and it didn't really work out in his favor. That specifically happened with Wilhelmsen. Whenever he dropped off deeper ahead of Heinze or Brown, you would have Wilhelmsen looking to break towards the United defense, but because they were so close, the combination play often fell to Wilhelmsen, but he couldn't control the ball, and when Totti looked to get the ball out to Mancini, it was often ahead of the Manchester United defense, and they were able to cope with that threat with O'Shea and Fletcher looking to sweep up. So the biggest problem there was that when Totti looked to drop off a bit deeper, there were no runs in behind. Every time he did combine with his teammates, it was ahead of the United defense, and they were organized and disciplined, and Roma didn't really cause a threat. The only time where Roma did look like scoring did actually stem through Totti. One time we saw Panucci throw into De Rossi, and before Carrick could step into the Italian, De Rossi lobbed the ball over him. We saw Fletcher and Vucinic miss a header, and it fell into the path of Totti running at the back four, but he fired his shot inches wide of the net. And besides that, from a set piece, Totti did force Van der Sar into a save. So as you could see, where Ferguson had a distinct tactical plan to shut down Roma from creating chances, Spalletti's tactical approach didn't really work out in his favor. When we look how United looked to approach the game, you have Alan Smith up front looking to dart into the channels and run across the center backs to take them out of the game. Rooney was dropping off to pull out Cassetti and link play with his teammates. Ronaldo was often dropping off a bit deeper from the right. There were times where he picked up the ball ahead of Mancini and O'Shea was pushing forward ahead of Panucci, and Ronaldo wanted space to take on defenders and penetrate through the center of the pitch. Whereas when we look to Giggs, Giggs often got the ball on either side of De Rossi, and he played a key role in that game. So as you can see, Giggs' ability to find space between the lines was pivotal, and Ronaldo's ability to cut from the right into central positions, beating Roma defenders, also played a key role in this game. And the other key factor that should be noted was that there was no distinct press on Michael Carrick. There were times where you had Totti dropping off and not picking up Carrick, and there were times where you had Totti and Vucinic looking to press the center backs, and there was no marker pushing out to Carrick, and he was able to get on the ball freely. So those were the key elements to how United were looking to approach the game, and rather than creating an ample amount of chances to highlight their ability to get into those positions, their finishing in the final third was efficient, and we're able to highlight these key elements and all the goals that they ended up scoring. When we look to the first goal, we have Ronaldo picking up the ball in a deeper position ahead of Mancini. He drifts to the right, and what ends up happening here was that with Pizarro coming across to close him down, Ronaldo splits those two markers and plays the ball beyond Totti for Carrick pushing into an advanced position. No one closes Carrick till he gets into Roma's third, and before De Rossi can make a tackle, he fires a superb effort into the top corner. And when we break down the second goal, it does feature a Roma pressing breakdown, but it also highlights how Rooney, Carrick, and Giggs were able to influence the game. We have Totti and Vucinic stepping to the center backs to close them down, and Brown on the ball is able to split Totti and Wilhelmsen to find Rooney dropping off of Cassetti. What should be noted here is that Carrick was dropping off a bit deeper to get on the ball, and Pizarro stepped into his path, but when Pizarro noticed that Brown was going to play the ball to Rooney, he shifted into the path of Rooney to leave Carrick free. When Rooney receives that ball, he instantly pops it into the path of Carrick, and when Carrick receives the ball, what he ends up locating is that he has Pizarro and De Rossi stepping into his path, and he also witnesses Heinze running off Wilhelmsen into that free left channel. So Carrick splits De Rossi and Pizarro. He ends up finding Heinze breaking forward down that left channel, which pulls out Mexes. But what also should be noted here is that no one is picking up Giggs, and when Heinze does push forward, he locates Giggs breaking towards goal. Kivu steps in towards that path, and he ends up leaving a gap between him and Panucci for Smith to break into. And by the time Giggs receives the ball from Heinze, he chips it over Kivu into the path of Smith, who fires a low effort beyond Donny. But in that breakdown, Rooney dropping off a bit deeper, Carrick being free in that midfield zone, and De Rossi stepping out of position, so Giggs is able to find Smith breaking across the center backs. United's third goal highlighted Ronaldo's dribbling, Giggs' ability to find space in that midfield zone, and Rooney getting the better of Cassetti once again. It starts with a transitional attack in that right channel where Ronaldo's able to get the better of De Rossi and Panucci, and even though he is fouled, he guides the ball into the path of Smith ahead of Kivu. What we should note here is that while Ronaldo was getting the better of De Rossi and Panucci, Giggs shifted out into that right channel. So when Smith gets the ball, he shifts the ball out to Ryan Giggs breaking forward, and Giggs, rather than driving towards goal, delivers an early cross around the center backs and into the path of Rooney, running across Cassetti to direct his effort off the far post and in. So as you could see there, you have Giggs shifting away from De Rossi, Ronaldo taking two Roma markers out of the game, and then Rooney running across Cassetti this time rather than dropping off a bit deeper and linking play. When we look to the fourth goal, it does involve Giggs, but we also witnessed the fact that Ronaldo in those 1v1 battles was unstoppable on the night. We end up seeing from an O'Shea throw-in, Fletcher turn away from Totti, and he ends up playing the ball across Panucci, Pizarro, and Vucinic to find Giggs dropping off of Mexes. Mexes tracks Giggs into United's half, and Giggs drops off the ball to Heinze. And with Mexes looking to continue his press on Heinze, Heinze ends up splitting Wilhelmsen and Mexes to find Giggs in that central midfield zone free. Giggs also locates Ronaldo shifting into that right channel with Panucci out of position, and he slides the ball across Pizarro into Ronaldo, and what ends up happening here is that Ronaldo breaks forward. We see Smith running across the center backs to allow Ronaldo to have a 1v1 battle with Kivu, and he cuts towards his right and he fires a low effort beyond Donny at the near post. But in that first half, you saw all the key elements as to how United were carving open that Roma defense. De Rossi wasn't wasn't doing a good job of picking up gigs. Ronaldo wasn't being stopped in 1v1 or even 1v2 battles. Rooney's ability to drag out Cassetti or run across him was pivotal, and Michael Carrick was getting enough time on the ball to dictate the tempo of the game. So even when we do look to the second half, the only significant change that we saw from Spalletti was that he swapped the two fullbacks. We had Panucci now playing from the right, and we ended up seeing Cassetti play to the left, but that didn't shift the tempo of the game for Roma. Following De Rossi and Mancini clearing a Giggs corner kick, we had Rooney skip away from Totti and Wilhelmsen to slide the ball back out to Giggs, and before Mexes could get across, we end up seeing Smith run across Kivu and Ronaldo run across Cassetti, and with Giggs playing that ball around the front post in towards that 6-yard box, we have Ronaldo getting ahead of Cassetti to increase United's lead. And even when you look to Carrick's second goal, yes, it was a moment of individual brilliance, but down that right-hand side, Ronaldo got the better of Mancini and Cassetti breaking towards the byline, and his overhit cross did fall to Heinze, who dropped it off to Carrick, who was able to put the ball in towards that top corner. But when you break down that game as a whole, United destroyed Roma in an hour. When you assess it defensively, they were able to get the better of Roma through stifling the midfield. The wider players were tracking back, and due to some help with their organized shape, Totti was unable to use his deep lying role to get runners in behind the United defense. Whereas when you look at United going forward, Roma's tactical approach was simply wrong on the night. They didn't stop Carrick. Rooney was involved dropping off deeper. Ronaldo was destroying players in 1v1 individual battles, and they didn't pick up Ryan Giggs, and Giggs and Ronaldo were the creative outlets that destroyed that Roma backline. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.